Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal giving the Republican response last night to the president's speech. Joining us this morning to talk about that and the president himself is Alabama Republican Spencer Bachus, a member of the House Financial Services Committee. He joins us here in the rotunda. Great to have you, Congressman.
Hey, Carl, thank you.
Did Governor Jindal get that done, get the work done last night, or it's a nearly impossible task to come after that kind of speech?
Well, I think he raised some important issues, and that's what are the consequences of all this borrowing and spending on future generations, and our ability to pay for what we already, those things we've already committed to do.
The president says, look, I'll cut the deficit in half by the time I'm done here. Judd Gregg has said taxes are going to have to go up. Are those not steps in that right direction?
Well, Carl, if you line up all his promises he made in the campaign, those would add up to more spending. And, he does have some good proposals. Alternative energy is good, but he doesn't mention nuclear. You can't get there without nuclear energy. But we want to work with him. Yeah. But we want to raise issues like fairness, the 95% of Americans who are paying their mortgage on time. Let's not direct all these programs towards people who are underwater, who have failed to make their mortgage payment. People are saying this is not fair. We need a fairer program, something to help all Americans. We need more certainty. We seem to rush from crisis to crisis. We wait for an institution to fail or on the threshold of failing, and we rush in with a government bailout. We need the market to attract capital. The market needs certainty. And I think what the president needs to do, and the Secretary of Treasury, Geithner, and the Chairman Bernanke, is say, look, this is what we're going to do, explain the guidelines, the principle, the fairness of it, and give some certainty to the market. If
you got that certainty, would your party be more willing than they otherwise would be to approve more spending? If you knew that there was a consistent plan and not the seemingly ad hoc stuff we're getting.
Well, that's right. It's a piecemeal, ad hoc, haphazard response to an event that overtake us. We instead need a game plan for getting us out, attracting private capital into the market, restoring confidence in the market, and above all, certainty. There's a lot of capital on the sidelines. People tell us we'd like to invest, but we don't know where the government's going with this policy.
Right. Do you have a clear handle on how much ownership the government is willing to take on banks? Do you understand that? I mean, is it clear to you if we have nationalized, if we're on a path toward that, or if the government is going to stop somewhere short of that?
Well, we're on a path towards it, but remember in October there was a solvency problem. There was a real chance that our financial institutions might collapse. And we did restore, and that gave us sort of an opportunity to go from there and do some other things. I think the TAF program, where you have the term asset lending facility.
Going to $1 trillion.
Yeah, things, those are more traditional plans. They don't intervene into the ownership of the companies. They don't expose the taxpayers to as much money, and they don't pick winners and losers, and that's important. When you increase your lending facilities, you help all Americans, you help all businesses. We hear from businessmen and small business owners and even individuals that says our line of credits are being restricted, we pay on time, or we've always paid, now the bank wants us to pay 10 or 20% of the principal. They want to up our interest rate. Those lending facilities, which would give liquidity to the market, would help. But I think only if the government said, all right, this is what we're going to do,
right,
and nothing more. Now, you do have to address troubled assets. We've been talking about that since October. And price, we've never gotten an answer as far as price.
How you price these instruments. One thing that would help solve all of that is just to rescue the common equity of a lot of these banks. And some argue that mark-to-market is the easiest and certainly the cheapest way to get there. We asked Congressman Cantor whether or not there's any appetite or hunger or any kind of movement on that front on the Hill. It seems like it's sort of bubbling, but it hasn't caught fire.
Well, Roy Blunt and I worked on a provision, and we put it in the legislation, the original TARP legislation in October, to study that. And they did make some modifications, but they've never come back and said, you're right, it is a problem. But I can tell you that every banker in America says it's a problem. Mark-to-market was a response to Enron. It was a response to WorldCom. You know, people need to know the value of the assets. However, in a crisis, in a panic, the value of those assets are unnecessarily discounted, and mark-to-market doesn't work so well in a crisis.
So are you confident it's going to get anywhere, or is it just going to get studied to death?
Well, I hope it does get someplace. I hope it, you know, and I think sooner rather than later. I think it ought to be part of a comprehensive thing where this administration, and we'll be partners in that, comes out and said, this is what we're going to do. This is an exit strategy. We're not going to pick winners and losers. We're going to do things that don't expose the taxpayer to unnecessary harm, but we're going to get the job done. You know, Colin Powell said, when you fight a war, go in with everything. Don't have this piecemeal, incremental thing. You know, you're just fighting a losing battle.
Right.
This is a big economy. And it needs a plan that's fair, that's comprehensive, and that doesn't expose the taxpayer. You need some public-private partnership, and I've been talking to the administration about that.
You're going to talk to them more about financial regulation today?
Well, actually, I'll be at the White House sometime, but we postponed it from 11:30 because of the Bernanke hearing, but I'll be over there later this afternoon.
Is your argument going to be anywhere around the notion that we've seen a lot of blow-ups. The Madoffs and the Sanfords have crushed confidence to some degree. But the laws they broke were already laws. It wasn't an issue of regulation, it was an issue of enforcement. Is that what you're going to try to argue?
Well, some regulation that should have gone on, but you know, the sort of you know, that's past us. And in the future, we need reg reform. But right now, with the market so uncertain, I'm not sure that we need a wholesale change in regs and capital requirements in the midst of this uncertainty. I'm not sure that doesn't create more uncertainty. And we are going to talk about reg relief. But what I would like to do is say, look, more than anything, these markets need certainty. You've got a lot of businesses, you've got a lot of financial institutions, you've got a lot of individuals waiting to see whether the government's going to bail them out, waiting to see if they're going to do anything about the troubled assets, and if so, what price. We need certainty. Right. And we don't need this continue and just wait on a blow-up and a Band-Aid.
Yeah, once you mess with people's expectations, you've really tainted the market to a large degree.
And the big question that everybody keeps saying is, this is not fair.
Right.
I'm paying my mortgage on time. I didn't get in trouble. And so it needs to be a plan that 95% of the American people say, this will help me, not just those lenders, those investors, those borrowers who are underwater. Now, we all know that some of them, they were victims of fraud. And, you know, we all know foreclosures hurt the whole community. But let's not drive more people into foreclosure or encourage people to say, you know, you're only eligible for this program if you fail to make your mortgage payment.
Sure, right.
There's a lot of resentment out there. And the communication hadn't been there. Yeah. The communication hadn't been there.
Yeah. Congressman, great to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you as always for your time. Spencer Bachus of Alabama. Joe.